Do you think this is funny? The words sliced through the Providence municipal courtroom with chilling clarity. Judge Frank Caprio didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. Every syllable carried the authority of decades spent on the bench. 17-year-old Marcus Thompson had just rolled his eyes, not subtly, but with such exaggerated disrespect that nearly everyone in the room noticed. In the very next instant, the mood shifted. The grin vanished from his face. His mother sucked in a sharp breath. The court reporter's fingers froze above the keyboard. Everyone sensed it at once. Something unforgettable was about to happen. What Judge Caprio did next stunned the entire courtroom, including Marcus's own mother. To understand how it reached this moment, you have to rewind to 9:30 a.m. that Tuesday morning, when Marcus Thompson strolled into Judge Caprio's courtroom as if it were his personal hangout. Marcus wasn't a first-time offender. He already carried 3 speeding citations, 2 parking violations, and now stood on the edge of a very costly life lesson. In the gallery, his mother, Patricia Thompson, sat twisting her hands together. She had taken time off work yet again to deal with another mess created by her son, case number 2024 TAR 8847, the bailiff announced. City of Providence versus Marcus Thompson. Marcus dragged himself toward the defendant's table. His designer sneakers squeaked loudly against the polished courtroom floor. Earbuds hung loosely around his neck. His phone buzzed, and without hesitation, he pulled it out and checked it, right in front of the judge. Judge Caprio watched silently. At 77 years old, he had seen every kind of defendant imaginable. But something about this young man immediately stood out: the slouched posture, the bored expression, the way he scanned the room like he was waiting for entertainment to begin. Mr. Thompson, Judge Caprio said calmly, do you understand why you're here today? Marcus shrugged. Some tickets or something. The air shifted. Some tickets or something, Judge Caprio repeated slowly. Mr. Thompson, you've accumulated more than $1,200 in fines, including 3 speeding violations in school zones. Do you consider that something? Marcus shifted uncomfortably. Look, my dad's lawyer said you'd probably lower the fines or whatever. Can we just get this done? I've got places to be. A murmur rolled through the courtroom. The clerk looked up from her screen. Patricia Thompson's face drained of color. She knew her son could be rude, but this was far worse than she expected. Judge Caprio leaned forward slightly. His expression stayed composed, but anyone familiar with him could sense the storm forming. Mr. Thompson, he said, do you see the flag behind me? He gestured toward the American flag hanging beside the bench. Do you know what it represents? Yeah, Marcus replied with a theatrical eye roll. America. Can we just pay and go? That was the moment everything changed. Do you think this is a joke? Judge Caprio's voice cut through the room like a scalpel. Marcus's smirk disappeared instantly. His mother gripped the bench in front of her. The bailiff straightened. The courtroom fell into absolute silence, broken only by the faint hum of the air conditioner and distant traffic outside. Judge Caprio stood up. He wasn't tall or physically intimidating, but the authority he projected filled every corner of the room. Son, he said evenly, let me explain something to you. That flag represents every man and woman who sacrificed their lives so you could stand in this courtroom and behave the way you just did. Your attitude just cost you far more than you expected. Marcus swallowed hard. For the first time, he stood upright. I'm sorry, Your Honor. I didn't mean it. Stop, Judge Caprio said, raising his hand. You didn't mean what? You didn't mean to roll your eyes? You didn't mean to check your phone in my courtroom? You didn't mean to treat this process like it was an inconvenience? The silence stretched painfully long. Marcus opened his mouth, then shut it. His hands trembled as reality finally set in. Mr. Thompson, Judge Caprio continued, you're 17. You think you know everything. You think the world owes you something. But today, standing right here, you're going to learn about respect, responsibility, and how the real world works. In the gallery, Patricia Thompson began to cry openly. She had tried for years to instill discipline and respect in her son. Now she was watching a lesson she could never have taught herself. Judge Caprio stepped down from the bench and stood directly in front of Marcus. The height difference was small, but the psychological impact was overwhelming. Tell me about your mother, Judge Caprio said quietly. What? Marcus asked, confused by the sudden shift. Your mother, the judge repeated. The woman sitting behind you who took time off work to be here. Tell me about her. Marcus glanced back and, for the first time, really saw her tears. She works 2 jobs, he said softly. She's a good mom. 2 jobs, Judge Caprio echoed. And she's sitting here on a Tuesday morning because her son believes traffic laws don't apply to him. Because her son thinks this courtroom is a joke. How do you think that makes her feel? Then Judge Caprio delivered the words that finally broke him. Mr. Thompson, he said, your mother came to this country from Jamaica 30 years ago with nothing but hope. She worked nights cleaning offices so she could attend school during the day. She earned her nursing degree while raising you and your sister alone. The judge paused, and this, he said firmly, is how you choose to honor that sacrifice, by mocking the very system that gave her the opportunity to build a better life. Marcus's eyes filled with tears. The lesson had landed. Marcus's eyes widened in disbelief. How could Judge Caprio possibly know so much about his family? Judge Caprio noticed the confusion instantly. I do my homework, son, he said calmly, reading the look on the teenager's face. Every person who stands in front of me, I learn their story. Because justice isn't only about punishment. It's about understanding. He paused, then continued, and what I understand about you, Marcus, is that somewhere along the way, you forgot where you came from. The change in Marcus was undeniable. His shoulders dropped, not in defiance, but under the weight of genuine shame. When he turned toward his mother again, he didn't just see disappointment, he saw years of exhaustion, sacrifice, and love he had taken for granted. I'm sorry, Mom, he whispered, his voice trembling but loud enough for the entire courtroom to hear. Judge Caprio raised a hand gently but firmly. And not yet, he said. First, you owe an apology to this courtroom. To every person here who came seeking justice and had to sit through your disrespect. Marcus turned slowly to face the gallery. His throat tightened, and his voice cracked. I'm sorry, he said. I was wrong. I apologize to everyone here. Judge Caprio nodded once. And now, he said, returning to his bench, let's discuss your fines. Marcus stiffened, bracing himself. He expected the full amount, maybe even more. Your original fines total $1,247, Judge Caprio said evenly. However, I'm going to give you a choice. The room leaned in a choice, the judge continued, that will teach you more about responsibility and leadership than any fine ever could. Even Marcus sensed something life-changing was coming. Option 1, Judge Caprio said. You pay the full amount today. You walk out of here, and I hope this expensive lesson sticks. He paused. Option 2, I reduce your fine to $200. In exchange, you complete 40 hours of community service at Providence General Hospital, working alongside the nursing staff, the same profession your mother belongs to. You'll learn what real service looks like. The courtroom held its breath. Marcus stared, unsure whether he was being tested. But there's a condition, Judge Caprio added, his gaze never leaving Marcus. If you choose community service and fail to complete it, if you're late, if you leave early, or if you show even a trace of the attitude you brought into my courtroom today, your fine triples. He let the number land, $3,741. Patricia Thompson gasped. That amount exceeded what she earned in an entire month, and Marcus stood frozen, fully grasping the weight of the decision. This wasn't leniency, it was accountability with purpose. I'll take the community service, Your Honor, Marcus said quietly. Judge Caprio raised an eyebrow. Louder, son. Commit to it. Marcus straightened. I'll take the community service, Your Honor, he said again, this time strong and clear. For the first time that day, Judge Caprio smiled. The warmth in that smile revealed the man behind the robed, firm, but deeply compassionate. Mr. Thompson, he said, leadership isn't about getting your way. It's about understanding how your actions affect others. It's about owning your mistakes and working to correct them. Can you do that? Yes, Your Honor, Marcus said without hesitation. I promise. Judge Caprio nodded, but he wasn't finished. Mrs. Thompson, he said, turning toward the gallery. Please stand. Patricia rose slowly, unsure of what was coming. Your son is fortunate to have you, Judge Caprio said warmly. Single mothers who work 2 jobs to raise their children are the backbone of this society. I want you to know this courtroom sees you. It honors you. And it respects your sacrifice. Patricia broke down, overwhelmed by words she had waited decades to hear without prompting. The courtroom erupted into applause. Marcus watched his mother receive recognition she had never once asked for, and tears streamed down his face. Your Honor, he said through sobs, can I hug my mom? Judge Caprio smiled. Son, you can hug your mother anytime. That's what good sons do. Marcus rushed to her, and their embrace became a moment no one in that courtroom would forget, a symbol of accountability, forgiveness, and second chances. Even the court reporter wiped her eyes. When the applause faded and mother and son separated, Judge Caprio spoke once more. Mr. Thompson, your community service begins this Saturday at 7 a.m. You'll report to Mrs. Rodriguez, the hospital's volunteer coordinator. You'll work every Saturday for 10 weeks. Yes, Your Honor, Marcus said eagerly, and one more thing, the judge added. After each day of service, I want a handwritten report. 1 page. Not about the hospital, about what you learned about yourself. Marcus nodded firmly. I will. Thank you for giving me this chance. As the bailiff called the next case, Marcus approached the bench once more. Your Honor, can I ask you something? Judge Caprio gestured for him to continue. How did you know so much about my mom, about her coming from Jamaica, everything? Judge Caprio smiled. Son, I'd been on this bench for over 30 years. I've learned that everyone who comes before me has a story. Your mother's immigration records, her education, her work history, it's public information for anyone willing to look. He paused, and I look. Because understanding people is the foundation of justice. Marcus shook his head in disbelief. You research every case? Every single one, Judge Caprio said. Because fairness requires effort. That's what real leadership looks like, doing the work even when no one's watching. What happened next proved the lesson had worked better than anyone expected. 6 weeks later, Marcus Thompson returned to Judge Caprio's courtroom not as a defendant, but as a visitor. He stood beside Mrs. Rodriguez from Providence General Hospital. "Your Honor," she said, smiling, "I wanted to personally thank you for sending Marcus to our unit. In just 6 weeks, he's become one of our most reliable volunteers." Story continues. Got it? Below is a full, complete, long-form English rewrite of everything you just provided, nothing cut, nothing summarized, no shortcuts. The story, emotion, length, and impact are all preserved, but the wording is entirely rewritten. Become one of our most committed volunteers. He has already completed the 40 hours required by the court, yet he asked to continue volunteering throughout the summer. A soft glimmer of pride appeared in Judge Caprio's eyes. "Is that true, Mr. Thompson?" the judge asked. Marcus stepped forward. This time, he stood straight, shoulders back, eyes steady, a completely different young man from the boy who had once rolled his eyes in this very courtroom. "Yes, Your Honor," Marcus said with a genuine smile. "Working at the hospital, seeing what my mom and her co-workers do every single day, it changed how I see everything. I've decided I want to study healthcare administration in college. I want to help hospitals run better so people like my mom can focus on what really matters, taking care of patients." The transformation was undeniable. The dismissive teenager who once treated the courtroom like a joke had evolved into a young man with purpose, direction, and humility. "And how about your driving record?" Judge Caprio asked, his tone knowingly curious. Marcus smiled. "Clean, Your Honor. Not a single ticket. Not even parking." He paused, then added quietly, "I drive like my mother's life depends on it, because someone else's mother's life actually does." Patricia Thompson glowed with pride from the gallery. The same woman who once sat frozen in embarrassment now watched her son speak with confidence, maturity, and respect. Judge Caprio stepped away from the bench once more, but this time, his presence carried warmth instead of authority. "Mr. Thompson," he said, "you've learned lessons many people never learn, even in adulthood. You've learned that respect isn't automatic, it's earned. You've learned that your choices don't just affect you, they ripple outward. And most importantly, you've learned that real strength comes from serving others, not from elevating yourself above them." He paused, letting the words settle. 6 weeks ago, Judge Caprio continued, "You walked into my courtroom believing you already knew everything. Today, you leave with something far more valuable than knowledge. You leave with wisdom." Marcus swallowed hard. "The wisdom to understand," the judge said, "that leadership isn't about power over people, it's about using whatever power you have to lift others up." Marcus stepped forward and extended his hand. Judge Caprio took it firmly. "Thank you, Your Honor," Marcus said. "For seeing who I could become, not just punishing who I was." Judge Caprio smiled softly. "That's the purpose of this courtroom, Mr. Thompson. Not just to deliver justice, but to offer hope." As Marcus and his mother walked out together that day, they moved differently than they had 6 weeks earlier. They walked united, strengthened by accountability, bound by respect, and changed by the realization that real transformation is always possible when someone cares enough to demand better. The footage of Marcus's first court appearance and his return went viral, surpassing 50 million views across platforms. Viewers called it a masterclass in leadership, proof that sometimes the greatest consequence isn't punishment, but guidance. Judge Frank Caprio demonstrated that true authority isn't the power to crush someone's spirit, it's the wisdom to redirect it towards something meaningful. He showed that respect can't be forced, only inspired, and that justice reaches its highest form when it transforms lives instead of merely penalizing mistakes. Subscribe if you believe in second chances. Share this story with someone who needs to be reminded that growth is always possible. And remember, real leaders don't create followers. They create more leaders. In a world where authority often feels cold and detached, Judge Caprio reminds us that leadership rooted in compassion isn't rare, it's necessary. Marcus Thompson learned that respect is built through action, that consequences can become opportunities, and that the people who challenge us the hardest are often the ones who care enough to expect more from us. The Providence Municipal Courtroom might seem like an unlikely place for life-altering moments. But under Judge Caprio's leadership, it becomes a classroom where character is forged, humility is taught, and futures are rewritten one case at a time. Yet the story didn't end there. 3 months later, Marcus made headlines again, not for breaking rules, but for breaking barriers. He organized a hospital fundraiser that raised over $15,000 for new medical equipment. "I wanted to give back to the place that gave me a second chance," Marcus told reporters. Patricia Thompson watched proudly as her son addressed the hospital board. 6 months ago, I was ashamed sitting in that courtroom, she said. Today, I'm proud to say I'm Marcus's mother. Judge Caprio had one final lesson that would permanently shape Marcus's life. When Marcus invited the judge to his graduation, Judge Caprio asked him, "What do you think was the most important moment in our first meeting?" After several guesses, Judge Caprio smiled. "It was when you said, 'some tickets or whatever.' That told me everything. You weren't a bad kid, you were a young man who had lost his way, but wasn't beyond redemption. You saw something in me I didn't see in myself," Marcus replied. Judge Caprio shook his head. "No, son. I saw something you had forgotten you already had. The respect, intelligence, and character were always there. You just needed reminding." Years later, when Marcus walked across the stage at his college graduation, Judge Caprio was indeed in the audience. By then, their connection had grown into something neither could have predicted during that first courtroom encounter. Marcus had launched a mentorship program pairing at-risk teenagers with healthcare professionals. Directly inspired by his own experience, Judge Caprio became more than a reference. He became a mentor. And eventually, a friend. Judge Caprio taught me that leadership isn't about the authority to punish, Marcus would later say during public talks. It's about the courage to see potential where others see problems, and the willingness to invest in that potential even when it's buried under mistakes. The ripple effects of that one courtroom moment continue to spread. Marcus's mentorship program has guided more than 200 teenagers toward better paths. Patricia Thompson went on to earn her master's degree in nursing, encouraged by her son's transformation. And Judge Caprio continues to serve with the same wisdom and compassion that turned a disrespectful teenager into a community leader. The true measure of Judge Frank Caprio's leadership isn't found in the fines he imposed, but in the lives he lifted, and Marcus Thompson's story proves one lasting truth. Sometimes the most important verdict isn't guilty or innocent. It's the decision to see the human behind the mistake and the leader behind the lost cause.